And so back in 1985, I saw some studies relative to glutathione and how it played into these scenarios. That in fact, the glutathione levels, when they were low, liver function was dropping. And we were seeing a lot of compromised liver function. So it started thinking we need to upregulate glutathione, but also gut function. Anytime that you see, like these diseases of the gut, IBS, celiac, things of this nature, these people have reduced levels of glutathione. But what our technology is that started being developed about 5 years ago is nanosizing glutathione so that it gets it small enough, and we're talking less than 10 nanometers. And a nanometer is to the billionth of a meter. It's very small. So it has to be less than 10 nanometers to properly pass through the cell membrane.
Welcome back, folks, to the Healthy Habit Podcast, episode number 108. I'm your host, Dr. Dayan of Healthy Habit Medical Center. And today we got a first-time guest ever, even from back when we were doing the 1100 a.m. Healthy House call. We're talking with Dr. Jerry Shaw here today for episode number 108. I'm excited for this and the whole team there that helped set this up. Dr. Jerry Shaw is a 1980 graduate from Pasadena College of Chiropractic. He specializes in Applied Kinesiology, which a lot of our customers and patients are familiar with, Sacro-Occipital Techniques, traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic Medicine, and is often traveling to India to study the latter. He opened 3 multidisciplinary clinics in West Los Angeles and in North County, San Diego. And Dr. Jerry Shaw is currently retired from private practice, but still very passionate about health and wellness. Dr. Jerry, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Dan. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, like I said in the intro there, first time discussing health here with you over our podcast/radio airways. Before we started the podcast, we were on 1100 a.m. radio here in Phoenix. So this is going to be a first time event. So thank you again for coming on here today. And so what we're going to dive into here, first we can talk about, so we have some exciting new tech products that are going on, as you like to call them, technology products that you'd like to share with us today. So why don't we just start there? You have the stage, it's set, it's yours, and tell us about these products here that are on the radar.
Well, back in the day, I used to love to partner with naturopaths, MDs, various specialized professionals. And the reason is no one particular branch of the wellness arena, the practitioners, really can, I think, own the entire wellness space. We all see things from a little bit different perspective.
Yeah.
It's definitely why I gravitated to traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, because they tend to see the whole person, everything, mind, body, spirit, everything about the person enters into that equation. So there's no one size fits all form of medicine in that space. So we, in partnering with these various other modalities, we began to attract people that in many cases have been given up on by the mainstream Ayurvedic, not the Ayurvedic, the allopathic practice of medicine, which, what that is, that's standard of care, big pharma directed drug, surgery, that kind of thing. So the more difficult cases, it got passed over to us, where we could examine the entire person. And what we began to find was the source of those issues were gut and liver related. We saw a lot of, basically back in the day, a lot of autoimmune kind of cases. I know that's become exponential over the last 30 years, actually epidemic proportions and many different autoimmune conditions. We saw those early on, and we could track them back to gut and leaky gut, things of that nature. And we know the mechanisms, the fact that once the gut is compromised and the blood passes to, where does it go first? It goes to where everything can be modulated.
Right.
And that's the liver. And so the liver begins to overwork because of everything that's getting passed on to it isn't correct. And there's certain toxins that are being absorbed that have to be dealt with, et cetera. But in the meantime, the immune system is under siege because these large macromolecules are flooding into the bloodstream,
Right.
which activates what I call the second line of defense, because the first line is that barrier. Second line of defense, the macrophages, they go out and try to gobble these things up. But once that system gets overwhelmed, as we all know, then it passes to that third line of defense. Those are the killer cells. Those are the T cells, B cells, etc. And that gets a little tricky because once that happens, you have Th1, which is pretty good at targeting the things like, bacteria, fungi, viruses, things like that. But it can get pretty overwhelmed if it's on all the time. So what then happens is it passes over to Th2, a different part of the T cells. And that is a little less discerning of if there's a similar protein. Like, let's say you're ingesting a lot of these different foods, these complex proteins are ended up in the bloodstream. There's some similarities in the amino acid world with structures in our own bodies. And once these B cells start targeting those structures and creating templates, memory, that's your temporal immunity, your memory. Once it's targeting that, then it has that template. If it's similar to what it finds in your thyroid gland, it's Hashimoto's. If it's similar to certain tracts in the spinal cord, it could end up being ALS, Parkinson's, various other neurological syndromes. If it's skin, it could be, or connective tissues, it could be lupus or scleroderma. All of these different things, rheumatoid arthritis, the synovial membrane. Well, whatever it's reacting to, this out of control inflammation begins to start. So you can see as these things begin to break down the issues. And so back in 1985, I saw some studies relative to glutathione and how it played into these scenarios. That in fact, the glutathione levels, when they were low, liver function was dropping. And we were seeing a lot of compromised liver function. So it started thinking we need to upregulate glutathione, but also gut function. Anytime that you see, like these diseases of the gut, IBS, celiac, things of this nature, these people have reduced levels of glutathione. So what we begin thinking, we got to upregulate glutathione. It supports gut, it supports liver function, also very important for brain and nerve function, which is all the signaling that goes on, between, the gut brain, So that seemed to be the magic linchpin, and we needed to find a way to do that. And it proved to be way more difficult than we could have ever imagined. Certainly, we found out if you took it orally, it was primarily destroyed in the digestive tract, and it wasn't very therapeutic at all. We began to work with a lot of the precursors, like cysteine, glycine, glutamate, those kinds of things, making sure they were available, whether dietary sources or actually supplement sources if somebody was especially low in one of those. But again, we weren't seeing direct correlations in the manufacture or the upregulation of glutathione once you begin to meet those needs. So our understanding back then wasn't like it is today. Today we know that in order for glutathione to be created inside of our bodies, there's a whole series of steps it goes through there, and it's all genetically controlled. And for example, to put L-cysteine, to put that together with the glycine and the glutamate, there's a GCL gene that does that. But that gene can become blocked with mycotoxin exposure. That's mold exposure. It's fairly common. A lot of people have those issues. So that blocks that gene, so you're not going to build the glutathione, even if you have the precursors. Another thing that can block that gene is chronic inflammation. Another thing that blocks it is actually magnesium deficiency. Look at how common is chronic inflammation, how common is magnesium deficiency. Another thing that blocks it is iron toxicity. Also, there may be other heavy metal toxicities that can block that gene. So you can load that person up, and here's what happens if you load them up. Just for example, L-cysteine, if it builds up, the body's not able to convert it into glutathione because that is probably, it's called the rate limiting factor. It's the one that tends to drive the process the most. If L-cysteine builds up because it can't go through the process, it becomes a reactive nitrogen species as a cysteine, because that's where the first step in the body getting rid of it, flips it over to a cysteine. Then which is a sulfite. The body attempts to change it to a sulfate quickly so it can pee it out, but that requires another gene, and if you're deficient in molybdenum this time, that gene is deactivated. So L-cysteine can build up, and you have nitrogen reactive species, which creates issues. Glutamic acid, which is the one that is used in the process, it becomes glutamate. You just remove the hydrogen, becomes glutamate in its step of the body trying to get rid of it. That's a brain and neurological inflammatory agent. We're familiar with monosodium glutamate.
Yeah.
So you don't want a lot of that building up in the body either.
Sure.
So there were all of these issues that we didn't even fully understand back in the day. But what our technology is that started being developed about 5 years ago is nanosizing glutathione so that it gets it small enough, and we're talking less than 10 nanometers. And a nanometer is to the billionth of a meter. It's very small. There's tens of thousands of nanometers in just a page of paper, a thin page of paper. It's a very small thing, a nanometer. So it has to be less than 10 nanometers to properly pass through the cell membrane. And it had to do that in order to get into the cell, because here's what happens if it circulates in the bloodstream, it begins to get broken down. The same thing as if you introduce the precursors. Because we as practitioners, the gold standard was IV. And that's still in mainstream medicine, that's the gold standard delivery of glutathione, is with IV. That bypasses all of the issues with the digestive system. However, with a half-life of, it's arguable, different researchers say different amounts, but it's all pretty small. 90 minutes is about as long as I've heard anybody say. With a half-life of 90 minutes, you get some effect from an IV you could get effect for 2 or 3 days, but with the half-life continuing to degrade that, plus it's breaking down in the blood, you run a risk still of getting those three elements, the glycine, the glutamate, or the L-cysteine, actually becoming excessive. So to get it into the cell, that was the critical technology, and they have achieved that. Now, the other aspect of that technology, not only getting it small enough, but giving it a carrier, because glutathione tends to clump. It tends to attract, those molecules tend to kind of pull together. To keep it separate, they came up with what we call a HydraStat technology. It's a patented process where they've actually been able to bend the hydrogen atoms off the oxygen. So it changes the degree of the bond just enough that it literally grabs and hangs on to the glutathione molecule, which gives it not only a carrier, but gives it an attraction to passing through the actual cell membrane, because the cells typically love to pull that hydration in. Most people tend to run a little dehydrated. So with the HydraStat technology, they're finding within 70 to 90 seconds of the circulation of the blood, it's not only absorbed through the mucosa of the mouth because of the nanotech, but once it gets to the level of the cell membrane, as the blood circulates, within 70 to 90 seconds, it's in the cells. Now, here's the ultimate brilliance.
Right.
When it gets into the cell, now let's say that gene is blocked. And that's the reason the person's glutathione levels are so low. And there's all kinds of issues they're having because of this low glutathione, gut, liver, nervous system, whatever it is, chronic inflammations, whatever it may be. Now you're getting it into the cell. So whatever's happening begins to become more mitigated, because that's what we know glutathione does. It also is one of the greatest, best detoxifiers of heavy metals known. So if that's an iron toxicity in the cell blocking that gene, it starts pulling that out. If there's other mechanisms at play, deficiencies, et cetera, that have blocked certain processes within the cell, glutathione supports many of those processes, making them more efficient, more effective. Even perhaps if there is a deficiency driving that blockage, what is there is more effectively and efficiently used because of that lighting up.
Right.
So what we're seeing is that we're actually talking to the cell, getting that gene to light up, and along with the nano-L-cysteine, there's a along with the nano-glutathione rather, there's a nano-cysteine and L-cysteine in this product as well, the Swish 30. And the nano-L-cysteine is just there waiting until that gene gets cleared out. Now it's like priming the pump. Yeah. Our body is designed to produce the glutathione our body needs. It is the master detoxifier. It is the most powerful antioxidant known. And it does actually recycle other antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E. It is the linchpin molecule. Yeah. But now we can help facilitate the body actually producing its own. And that's the real brilliance of this technology, Dr. Dan, in my opinion.
Yeah. What a great answer to my original question on the technology products. What are you referring to? And here in episode number 108 on the Healthy Habit Podcast with Dr. Jerry Shaw. And he took a step back and actually you set the stage for why we even need this technology in the first place for this nutrient glutathione. You talked about the liver and the gut and how important this, they call it the master antioxidant for a reason, right? So here and you broke down the HydraStat technology here that's found in the Swish 30 product. This one's the oral rinse, but then we also have the PrimaSkin product. Both of these are on the shelf here at Healthy Habit Health Foods. The Swish 30 and the PrimaSkin, which has been very well received so far from customers and patients here at the store and clinic. It's only been a couple months that we've been carrying these, but it's been a really unique. It's actually the only type of glutathione products we have like this here at Healthy Habit, where we have the rinse and then the topical version here as well. So the HydraStat technology, basically we want to make sure that you can get proper absorption of the nutrients you're trying to get into the body, correct?
That's right.
That's the take home there. So again, this is hydrastat.com. You can head over there and I'll link this below. Hydrastat.com. Is this a good source for them to start off with, Dr. Jerry?
That's a great source. They can do a lot of research there and then they can contact you. Yep.
And this page right here is just under the science. If you just hit HydraStat Technology, you can stay in the loop here, what's going on here at this company. And we can even dive deeper now into specifics here. So thank you again for breaking that down, the technology behind this product. How do you think this might actually, cause a change in paradigm here in the healthcare system in America, where people are so deficient in these protective antioxidants?
Well, the current paradigm in healthcare it's abysmal, actually. We rank 47th in life expectancy in all the countries of the world. And if you take it disease by disease, we outrank a lot of the industrialized world in terms of a lot of those metabolic disorders, diabetes, et cetera, cancers, autoimmune disorders, Alzheimer's, all of these kinds of things. So we need a paradigm change. And I believe that paradigm change is taking more responsibility for ourselves, what we can do, the things we can do to upregulate our own body's ability to do what our body needs to do, rather than depending upon some outside source to get, we go to get the physical exam and we get tested every year, whatever it may be, and normal limits, because our body's keeping homeostasis. But then in the modern world, because we're so challenged by a terrible diet, so many toxicities, air, food, and water, high levels of stress, all of these things working against us, it's just a matter of time that those systems that keep us balanced start to break down. Now, what does the doctor do? The doctors tend to be so stressed out, so time limited, and kind of controlled with what they can do with their standard of care, that they write prescriptions. The issue with prescriptions is that sometimes they're warranted because you need to drive something a certain direction. Like there's something out of balance, you need to drive it a certain direction. But I call that substance not smart, because this body is divinely intelligent. It's infinitely intelligent. It's always working towards balance, works in all directions to bring that balance, too far, too little, always working towards that middle point. If you introduce a chemical that works in one direction, now the body's got to work against that, which the body can do because the body's real good at adapting and compensating. But what happens when another script is written? Right. Or things get so bad that there has to be a surgery, etc. So this kind of care has led us to this place where we don't have great numbers. The thing we need to do as a society is not argue about who pays for healthcare. We need to change that system to become more personally responsible. People take charge of that. And this is a great tool. The ability to, on a daily basis, upregulate your glutathione. There's 180,000, right at 180,000 peer-reviewed published studies on glutathione for a reason, because it is the most studied molecule in microbiology for a reason. And if we can upregulate that, it's a very powerful tool for us to take our responsibility back and improve our own numbers and live longer, stronger, and better lives, and not depend upon the intervention so much. So right. I think, yeah, we can change the paradigm.
Beautiful answer there, Doc. If we head over to HydraStat.com and you head over to, you see here, PrimaSkin up top, we'll dive into what we're about to discuss here. PrimaSkin, to close off today's episode, is a topical version of glutathione. Okay, nano-formulated skin solution. How is this product going to be a breakthrough? Why is this going to be a game changer when it comes to skincare, prevention, anti-aging medicine?
It's interesting how this happened. There was actually a lot of athletes that they were using the nano HydraStat with, and they were improving their performance. And one of them was a cyclist, and she got in a terrible accident, hit the pavement going 22 miles an hour and scraped up her face. And she thought, well, this stuff is nano. It's really helping me, physiologically, and I'm improving my performance.
Right.
What would happen if I dabbed it on my injury that the physician was saying she would surely need a lot of plastic surgery? So she's dabbing it on there, and the physicians were watching. And within a week, it was healed up with no scars. So it just was mind-boggling the difference it made. So they took that information and put some other ingredients that work well with the skin, with the nanotechnology, and created this amazing skincare. So what we started seeing was this became a real big attraction, because vanity is a big seller in our current world. And women started taking before and after pictures, well, women and men, and seeing a complete difference in the wrinkles and the way the skin appeared. And the reason is because the nanotechnology, it's able to get into the deep layers of the dermis, where the connective tissues, actually you can make an impact. So right. It's very interesting.
Amazing. So PrimaSkin, and then we also highlighted the Swish 30 briefly there. They're different routes of getting the glutathione into the body. And again, we're looking for optimal absorption here. If you're going to be spending money on a supplement, folks, right, you want to make sure you're getting your bang for the buck, right? And you're actually moving the needle and absorbing that thing that you're taking, correct? Is that a good summary from today? And we're going to have you back on again, my friend. We got to get you back on for a part 2 here, because this was just a good intro even to this technology in the first place. I think people will need to hear it again because it will be very helpful. So we got to get you back on, Dr. Jerry. So what's a good take home here then, last couple minutes here on what we've been discussing here today, my friend?
Well, you mentioned whether the nutrient actually gets into the body and actually is utilized. That's another thing we found. There was a lot of malabsorption syndromes. People could take the supplement and it never shows up in their body because the gut has become such an issue, and it's not gotten any better. It's gotten worse with the glyphosates and all of the toxins that they spray on our food supply. We have that malabsorption is a huge issue. So this kind of technology, I believe, as professionals, we have to avail it to the patients out there in need. And so this is cutting edge stuff. And thank you for Dr. Dan for being a part of this cutting edge openness and anything you're doing to help spread this message.
Well, of course, it's because it's actually going to help people, and we're in the field of actually trying to help with whatever we can, right? With lowest risk of side effects. A product like this, very low risk of side effects. Would you agree with that?
Well, absolutely. It's a substance your body recognizes because your body makes it. It just so happens that
Yeah.
as you get older, you make less and less and less of it. The most you'll ever have is when you're 18 to 20 years old. Remember how you felt
Yeah.
when you were 18 to 20-year old, like you were bulletproof. So we can really help people bring back that degree of, like, living longer, stronger, healthier lives, and be able to control that themselves is a great thing.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come on today, and I hope, again, we're going to have you on for a part 2. Dr. Jerry Shaw here, episode number 108, where we talk nanotechnology, HydraStat technology here on the PrimaSkin and then the Swish 30 as well. Dr. Jerry, thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. Look forward to it.